3 days. That was how long it took for the human fleet to systematically destroy every Vrelith ship in the system. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution, carried out with cold precision and absolute determination. Colonel Sang-hee worked in the interrogation rooms of the Fortress Olympus, extracting information from captured Vrelith officers. She was a patient woman with sharp features and sharper intelligence. Before joining the military, she had been a psychologist specializing in alien behavior. Now she used that knowledge to get answers from prisoners who thought they were too tough to break. The Vrelith officer sitting across from her had been the fleet's chief tactical coordinator. His name was Rekthar, and despite his injuries and his defeat, he still carried himself with pride. 2 of his forearms were broken and his scaled face was scarred from burns, but his eyes were clear and focused. "You want to know about the Dominion?" Rekthar said in halting human language. "I will tell you, not because you torture me. Your Dr. Tai Yang has been very kind with medical care. I tell you because you deserve to know what is coming." Sang-hee leaned forward slightly. "Go on." "This fleet was a test," Rekthar explained. "The Dominion has been watching your species for 5 years. You are new to deep space. You have only a few dozen star systems. The High Council wanted to know if you were worth conquering or worth trading with, so they sent Overlord Thexrin with orders to gauge your strength." "A test," Sang-hee repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "You invaded our territory, threatened our people, and started a war as a test?" "Yes," the alien said simply. "If you surrendered or were easily defeated, we would have claimed your worlds. If you fought well, we might have offered trade agreements instead. That is how the Dominion operates. We test every species we meet." Sang-hee stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "And now you've seen how we respond to tests. I hope the information was worth the price." She left the interrogation room and went straight to the command center, where Admiral Kyung-soo was coordinating the final stages of the operation. The admiral looked up as Sang-hee entered, reading the expression on the colonel's face. "Bad news?" Kyung-soo asked. "The Vrelith Empire is watching," Sang-hee reported. "This was all a test to see how we'd react. They're out there right now, observing from outside our sensor range, waiting to see what we do." The admiral's jaw tightened. "Then we need to send them a message they can't misunderstand. Get me President Yoon-ji on a secure channel." An hour later, the president of the Terran Coalition appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. Yoon-ji was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen humanity's worst days and its greatest triumphs. She had been elected because people trusted her to make the hard decisions that kept humanity safe. "Admiral Kyung-soo, Colonel Sang-hee, all command personnel," the president began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I have reviewed the intelligence reports. I have consulted with the Terran Council. Our decision is unanimous. The Vrelith Dominion wanted to test us. They wanted to see what humanity is capable of. So we will show them exactly what we are." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "No survivors. No prisoners returned. No mercy for those who cross our borders uninvited. We gave them 3 warnings. They ignored everyone. Now we show the galaxy what happens when you make that mistake. Execute protocol final message." The channel closed. For a moment, the command center was silent. Then Kyung-soo began issuing orders, her voice steady despite the terrible nature of the task ahead. "All ships, this is Admiral Kyung-soo. Protocol final message is now active. Hunt down every escape pod. Destroy every lifeboat. Find every ship that's trying to flee and eliminate it. The Vrelith wanted to test us. Let's give them results they'll never forget." Pilot Isul sat in the cockpit of her fighter, the sleek craft drifting among the debris of destroyed warships. She was 24 years old, the youngest ace pilot in the fleet with 17 confirmed kills in her career. Now she was being asked to do something that made her stomach twist with discomfort. "Ghostwing, this is Control." The voice crackled in her helmet. "We're detecting escape pods at coordinates 773 Mark 9. Intercept and destroy." Isol's hands tightened on the controls. "Control, confirm orders." "You want me to fire on escape pods?" "Confirmed, Ghostwing, presidential directive." "No survivors." She took a deep breath and pushed her fighter toward the coordinates. Part of her wanted to refuse, to argue that killing helpless survivors was wrong. But another part, the part that had studied human history and understood why these rules existed, knew that this was necessary. The escape pods appeared on her sensors, a dozen of them drifting through space. Inside each one would be wounded Vrelith sailors, maybe 3 or 4 aliens per pod hoping to be rescued by their fleet. But their fleet was gone, destroyed or captured. These pods were all that remained. Isolde armed her weapons and opened fire. The pods exploded one by one, quick and clean. She tried not to think about the lives inside them, tried to focus on the bigger picture. If even one Vrelith survived to report back that humans showed mercy, more fleets would come. More tests, more invasions. This had to be absolute. Ghostwing, targets eliminated, she reported, her voice hollow. Across the system, the same scene played out dozens of times. Human fighters and patrol ships hunted down every escape pod, and every damaged vessel trying to limp away. The Vrelith had come to human space with confidence and pride. They would leave as debris and warning signs, but not all of them would die. That was part of the plan too. Commander Jiwan sat in the silent verdict, tracking a single Vrelith scout ship that had been damaged in the first exchange. It was trying to reach the edge of the system, its engines sputtering and failing, leaving a trail of leaking fuel behind it. "Commander, we could destroy that ship easily," her tactical officer said. "Why are we just following it?" "Because we wanted to escape," Jiwan explained. "One ship, one crew. They'll carry the message back to their empire. They'll tell the Dominion exactly what happened here." She had already loaded the scout ship's computers with all the battle data, every recording of the fight, every image of destroyed Vrelith vessels. When that ship reached Dominion space, its crew would have no choice but to report the truth. They had crossed into human territory, and humanity had responded with overwhelming and merciless force. Dr. Taeyang sat in his medical bay, staring at his hands. He had protested the order to eliminate survivors, had argued that it violated every medical oath he had ever taken. Admiral Kyung-soo had listened patiently, then overruled him. "This isn't about medicine," the Admiral had said. "This is about survival. Humanity learned a long time ago that mercy to invaders just encourages more invasions. We have to be absolutely clear about our borders and the price of crossing them." Now Taeyang understood, even if he didn't like it. The Vrelith had come to test humanity's strength. Well, they had their answer. And that answer would echo across the galaxy. The first relativistic missile left the Iron Resolve at a fraction of light speed. It crossed the distance between the human ship and the Vrelith flagship in less than a second. The aliens didn't even have time to activate their defensive shields before the missile struck. The explosion was massive. The Vrelith flagship's entire forward section simply ceased to exist, torn apart by forces that converted matter directly into energy. Debris scattered in all directions, glowing white-hot from the impact. The rest of the ship tumbled through space, atmosphere venting from dozens of breaches, its lights flickering and dying. "Direct hit on the flagship," Hana reported, her voice carrying grim satisfaction. "Overlord Thexrin's ship is dead in space. Life signs are weak. He might have survived, but his ship is finished." "Continue firing," Daewon ordered. "Don't give them time to think. Hit them hard and fast." 5 more missiles launched in quick succession. Each one found its target with devastating accuracy. 3 Vrelith cruisers exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The remaining ships finally began to react, their shields flickering to life and their weapons turning to face the Iron Resolve. But they were too slow, too unprepared for the sheer violence of human weapons. "Incoming fire," Hana warned. "Multiple plasma torpedoes and kinetic rounds." The Iron Resolve twisted sideways, its engines burning at maximum power. The human ship was smaller and faster than the Vrelith vessels, built for exactly this kind of combat. Point defense lasers lit up the darkness of space, destroying incoming projectiles before they could reach the hull. A few shots got through, slamming into the ship's armor plating and making the deck shudder beneath their feet. "Damage report," Daewon snapped. "Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 8. Boram replied, reading from her console. "Emergency bulkheads are sealed. No casualties, shields holding at 83%. Across the system, reinforcements were arriving. Admiral Kyung-soo's command ship, the massive battlecruiser Fortress Olympus, emerged from behind one of the system's moons. With it came 11 more human warships, each one moving into position with practiced precision. "This is Admiral Kyung-soo to all Terran vessels." The Admiral's voice crackled over the fleet channel. "Execute combat formation Delta 7. Show these invaders what happens when they underestimate humanity." The human ships spread out, creating a deadly net around the Vrelith fleet. The aliens were now completely surrounded, trapped in a system they had entered so confidently just minutes before. More Vrelith ships were still jumping in from outside the system, adding to their numbers. but each one appeared directly into the human firing solution. From the edge of the battlefield, Commander Jiwan watched through the sensors of her stealth destroyer, Silent Verdict. Her ship was invisible to Virelith scanners, coated in advanced materials that absorbed sensor beams and masked her energy signature. She had been waiting here for 3 days, knowing that eventually, someone would try to cross the human border. "Commander," her tactical officer said quietly, "the Virelith flagship is trying to send a distress signal. High-power transmission aimed back toward their home space. Not today," Jiwan said coldly. "Arm the electromagnetic pulse cannon. Target their communications array." The Silent Verdict moved closer to the dying Virelith flagship. The aliens never saw it coming. A focused pulse of electromagnetic energy lanced out from the human ship, frying every piece of communications equipment on the Virelith vessel. The distress signal cut off mid-transmission, leaving only static. "Signal terminated," the tactical officer confirmed. "They got about 40% of their message out before we cut them off. Not enough for their empire to understand what happened here." "Perfect," G1 replied. "Now let's make sure none of the other ships try the same thing. Target all Virelith communication arrays. We want them isolated and confused." Meanwhile, back on the Iron Resolve, Dr. Taeyang received an urgent message. A Virelith escape pod had been captured by one of the human frigates. Inside was a wounded alien officer, still alive but badly injured. The pod was brought aboard Daiwan's ship, and Taeyang rushed to the cargo bay where it had been secured. The Virelith officer was massive, nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and thick, scaled skin. His uniform was torn and burned, and one of his arms hung uselessly at his side. Despite his injuries, his eyes burned with rage and defiance when the humans opened the pod. "I am Sub-Commander Velkoth of the Virelith Dominion," the alien growled in broken human language. "You have made a grave error. Our empire will crush your pathetic species for this insult." Taeyang approached carefully, medical scanner in hand. "Right now, you're the one who made an error. You crossed our border without permission. We warned you 3 times. Warnings mean nothing," Velkoth spat. "We are Virelith. We take what we want. 17 species have learned this truth. You will be the 18th. "No," Taeyang said simply. "We won't. Now hold still while I scan you. You're bleeding internally, and I'm not going to let you die until we get some answers." As Taeyang worked, he noticed something strange in his scanner readings. The Virelith officer had cybernetic implants throughout his brain and nervous system. They were sophisticated devices clearly designed for military purposes, but their function was disturbing. "These implants," Taeyang said slowly, "they're suppressing your fear response. You literally cannot feel afraid, can you?" Velkoth laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Fear is weakness. The Dominion removed that weakness from all our warriors generations ago. We cannot be intimidated. We cannot be frightened into retreat. We fight until we win or until we die." Taeyang felt a chill run down his spine. That explained everything. The Virelith hadn't ignored the warnings because they were arrogant. They had ignored them because they were psychologically incapable of understanding danger until it was too late. They couldn't feel the appropriate fear that would tell them to back down and survive. "Captain Daiwan needs to hear this," Taeyang muttered, reaching for his communicator. While the doctor worked, Velkoth managed to access a nearby data terminal with his good hand. His curiosity got the better of him, and he began searching through the ship's public database looking for information about humanity. What he found made his blood run cold. Artificial fear suppressors or not, he read about Earth's history, the countless wars, the weapons that could destroy entire continents, the nuclear fire that had nearly ended human civilization, the way humanity had clawed back from the brink of extinction and unified under a single purpose: never be victims again. Never allow anyone to threaten their survival. For the first time in his adult life, Velkoth felt something his implants couldn't quite suppress. Not fear exactly, but recognition, understanding, horror at what his overlord had done by crossing into this species' territory. "We should have listened," he whispered, staring at the screen showing images of Earth's ruined cities from the old wars. "You tried to warn us. 3 times? We should have listened." "Yes," Taeyang agreed quietly, finishing his medical work. "You should have. Now your entire fleet is going to pay the price for that mistake." Outside the ship, the battle continued to rage, and more Virelith vessels were dying with every passing moment. The damaged Virelith scout ship limped into Dominion space 47 days after the battle. Its hull was scarred and blackened. Its crew of 6 reduced to just 2 survivors who had spent the entire journey watching their crewmates die from wounds that slowly overwhelmed their medical supplies. The surviving captain, a young officer named Zekron, transmitted his report to the Dominion High Council with shaking hands. Attached to his report was every piece of data the humans had loaded into his ship's computers. Video recordings, tactical analyses, casualty reports. Everything the Dominion needed to understand what had happened to their fleet. In the Grand Council chamber on the Vrelith homeworld, 5 elders watched the recordings in complete silence. They saw Overlord Thexron's flagship torn apart in seconds. They saw their mighty warships destroyed by human weapons they didn't understand. They saw their soldiers cut down in boarding actions by an enemy that fought with terrifying efficiency. And at the end of the recordings, they saw a simple message written in both human and Vrelith languages. Cross into human space uninvited and your exit won't be alive. Elder Prime Ketherol, the oldest member of the council, finally spoke. His voice was heavy with the weight of 17 conquered species and 200 years of absolute victory. We sent 67 ships. None returned except this one damaged scout. The humans deliberately let it survive to deliver this message. They wiped out an entire Dominion fleet, another elder said, disbelief coloring his words. How is that possible? Our intelligence said they were a young species barely a century in space. Our intelligence was wrong, Ketherol replied. Look at their history. These humans spent thousands of years fighting each other with weapons that could destroy continents. They survived their own apocalypse and came out stronger. We should have known better than to test them. The recording spread quickly beyond the High Council. Within days, every species in the Dominion had seen them. Within weeks, they had leaked to the wider galactic community. Humanity had made sure the recordings would spread. They had encrypted them just enough to make it seem like secret intelligence, which guaranteed that everyone would want to see them and share them. Different species reacted in different ways to the recordings. The Thalen Collective, a peaceful trading federation, immediately began drafting formal diplomatic greetings to humanity, making sure to request permission before approaching human space. The Corvan Raiders, a species of space pirates, quietly updated their navigation charts to mark human territory as absolutely forbidden. The Nexari Empire, which had been considering expansion toward human space, suddenly found other directions much more interesting. On the Galactic Communications Network, the recordings became the most discussed topic in living memory. Some species saw humans as dangerous savages who killed without mercy. Others saw them as a species that understood the importance of clear boundaries and the willingness to enforce them. A few saw them as kindred spirits who valued strength and survival above all else. Ambassador Dongmin prepared for humanity's first formal address to the Galactic Assembly. He was a diplomat by training but a soldier by experience, a man who understood both peace and war. As he waited in the staging area outside the assembly chamber, he reviewed his speech one final time, though he had already memorized every word. The Galactic Assembly was a massive structure orbiting a neutral star system, home to representatives from over 300 species. It was where the galaxy conducted its official business, where treaties were signed and disputes were resolved. Humanity had never sent a representative before, had never felt the need to participate in galactic politics. But now, after the Vrelith incident, the galaxy demanded to hear from them. Dongmin entered the assembly chamber and walked to the speaker's platform. Thousands of alien eyes watched him from seats arranged in vast circles around the central stage. Some looked curious. Some looked hostile. Many looked afraid. Members of the Galactic Assembly, Dongmin began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. I am Ambassador Dongmin, representing humanity and the Terran Coalition. I am here today to address the incident at our border with the Vrelith Dominion. The chamber fell silent. Every being present wanted to hear what the human would say, how he would justify the complete destruction of a Dominion fleet. 49 days ago, Vrelith warships crossed into human space without authorization. We detected them immediately. We contacted them using standard diplomatic protocols. We gave them 3 separate warnings, each one clearer than the last. We told them exactly what would happen if they continued their incursion. They ignored every warning. They even threatened to enslave our entire species. Dongmin paused, looking around the chamber. So we did exactly what we said we would do. We defended our territory. We eliminated the threat. We made sure the message was clear to the Dominion and to every other species in this galaxy. Humanity's borders are not suggestions. They are absolute. Cross them uninvited, and we will respond with maximum force. A Vrelith representative stood up from his seat, his face twisted with rage. You murdered our people. You killed survivors who had surrendered. You showed no mercy. We showed mercy 3 times, Dongmin replied calmly. We offered peace 3 times. Your overlord chose war instead. As for survivors, we have learned from our own history that showing mercy to invaders only encourages more invasions. We will not make that mistake. Our position is clear and will never change. Uninvited military forces entering human space will be destroyed completely. No negotiations, no exceptions. The chamber erupted in discussion, some species arguing loudly while others sat in thoughtful silence. Dongmin waited for the noise to die down before continuing. However, he said, and the chamber quieted again, humanity is not interested in conquest or expansion at the expense of others. We are willing to establish diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts with any species that approaches us peacefully and respectfully. We want to be good neighbors. We want to contribute to galactic civilization, but we will not tolerate threats, invasions, or tests of our resolve. He finished his speech and left the platform, returning to the human section of the assembly. Behind him, the debate continued for hours, but the message had been delivered and received. Humanity had drawn a line in space, and the galaxy now understood the price of crossing it. Back in human space, Captain Day One stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the stars beyond the viewport. The battle seemed like it had happened years ago, not just a few weeks. He had received a medal from President Yunji herself, along with every other member of his crew. But the medal felt heavy in his pocket, weighted with the memory of all those deaths. Lieutenant Hana joined him at the viewport. She had been his tactical officer for 3 years, and she could read his moods better than anyone. You're thinking about them. The Vrelith. Thousands of them, Day One said quietly. I killed thousands of them. We all did, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. You feel like a soldier who did his duty, Hana replied. You feel like someone who protected his people. The Vrelith made their choice when they crossed our border. We gave them every chance to turn back. They chose pride over survival. I know. Day One sighed. I know we did the right thing. I know our children will grow up safer because of what happened here. But I still see their faces sometimes in the recordings. I wonder if they had families. If they understood why they had to die. They understood at the end, Hana said. That captured officer Velkoth, he told Dr. Taeyang that they should have listened. They knew eventually. The message got through. In the training facility on Earth, Elder Haywan addressed a room full of young officers who would soon be assigned to border patrol duties. She was 93 years old, one of the last surviving veterans of the Earth unification wars that had nearly destroyed humanity a century ago. Her face was lined with age and scarred from battles fought long before most of these young people were born. You are wondering if what we did to the Vrelith was right, Haywan said, her voice still strong despite her age. You are wondering if we could have found another way. Let me tell you something about humanity's history. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We built weapons that could end civilization. We came within hours of destroying ourselves completely. Do you know how we survived? The young officers shook their heads, waiting for her answer. We survived because we learned when to be peaceful and when to be absolutely ruthless. We learned that there are times when mercy is wisdom and times when mercy is weakness. The Vrelith tested us. They wanted to see if we would roll over and submit like the 17 other species they conquered. We showed them the answer. We showed the entire galaxy the answer. She walked among the rows of seated officers, looking each one in the eye. Our reputation is set now. Every species knows what happens when you cross into human space uninvited. Some will respect us for it. Some will fear us. Some will hate us. But none of them will underestimate us ever again. And that means our children and grandchildren will grow up in a galaxy where humanity is respected and our borders are honored. Young Ensign Boram stood at attention, listening to Elder Haywan's words. The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Captain Day One stood with his hands behind his back, watching the tactical display as 15 unknown vessels crossed into human territory. They were large, bulky ships that moved with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. Lieutenant Hana, distance to the unknown vessels? Day One asked. His voice calm despite the tension that filled the bridge. 30,000 kilometers in closing, Captain, Hana replied from her tactical station. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls, analyzing the alien ships. Their weapons are powered up. They're not even trying to hide their military capability. Ensign Boram looked up from the communications console, her young face tight with worry. This was her first real encounter with hostile aliens, and she could feel her heart racing. Sir, should I transmit our standard greeting? No, Day One said quietly. They crossed our border without permission. They know exactly what they're doing. Open a channel and give them the first warning. Boram nodded and activated the communication system. Her voice was steady as she spoke, though her hands trembled slightly. Attention unknown vessels. You have entered Terran space without authorization. This is your first warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted back to the border. Failure to comply will result in defensive action. The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Seconds turned into minutes. The alien ships continued their advance, not slowing down even slightly. They acted as if the human ship didn't exist at all. Dr. Taeyang entered the bridge from the medical bay carrying a data pad. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent years studying alien species.
Captain, I've been analyzing their hull markings.
They match the Vrelith Dominion from our intelligence reports. They've conquered 17 different species in the past 2 centuries. 17, Daewon repeated, his eyes never leaving the display. And now they think we'll be number 18. They might not know much about us, Taeyang suggested. Our space is relatively new. They probably think we're just another easy target. Hana snorted from her station. Then they're about to get an education. The alien ships continued their approach. They were now close enough that the iron resolve sensors could pick up detailed readings. Each vessel was twice the size of Daewon's ship, covered in heavy armor plating and bristling with weapon ports. They moved in a tight formation that suggested military discipline and experience. Second warning, Captain. Boram asked. Daewon nodded. Send it. Attention, Vrelith vessels. This is your second warning. You are in violation of Terran sovereignty. Turn back now or you will be fired upon. We will defend our territory. This is not a negotiation. Again, silence. The Vrelith ships didn't even acknowledge the transmission. They simply kept coming, their weapons still hot and ready. One of the larger vessels began to pull ahead of the formation, clearly the flagship. I'm picking up a transmission from the lead ship, Boram said suddenly. It's directed at us, but it's not on standard diplomatic channels. They're broadcasting on a frequency usually used for threats. Let's hear it, Daewon ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A harsh, grating voice filled the room, speaking in heavily accented but understandable human language. Small human vessel. Your species is now property of the Vrelith Dominion. Stand down and prepare to be boarded. Your resistance is noted and will be punished appropriately. This is Overlord Thexrin. You will obey. The transmission ended abruptly. For a moment, nobody on the bridge spoke. Then Hana let out a dark laugh. Did he just try to claim ownership of humanity? That's exactly what he did, Taeyang said, shaking his head. Their psychology is fascinating. They genuinely believe they can just announce our subjugation and will accept it. Daewon's expression didn't change, but his voice became colder. Boram, send the third and final warning. Use Protocol Redline authorization codes. Boram's eyes widened. She knew what Protocol Redline meant. Every human in the fleet knew. It was the point of no return, the moment when diplomacy ended and survival began. Her hands moved across the console, inputting the special codes that would mark this transmission as humanity's last peaceful offer. Vrelith Overlord Thexrin, this is Captain Daewon of the Terran Defense Fleet. This is your third and final warning. You have violated our territory. You have threatened our people. You have 10 minutes to turn your ships around and leave our space. If you do not comply, Protocol Redline will be activated. Every vessel that entered our territory without permission will be destroyed. No exceptions. No survivors. We gave you 3 chances. This is the last one. The transmission ended. The bridge crew looked at their captain, waiting for orders. Daewon stood perfectly still, watching the countdown timer that appeared on the main display. 10 minutes. 600 seconds for the Vrelith to make their choice. Captain, Hana said quietly. All weapon systems are ready. I've loaded the relativistic missiles into tubes 1 through 6. Point defense systems are active. Emergency protocols are standing by. Good, Daewon replied. Dr. Taeyang, get back to medical and prepare for casualties. We might take some hits before this is over. Taeyang nodded and left the bridge quickly. The countdown continued its steady march toward 0. 8 minutes. 7 minutes. 6 minutes. The Vrelith ships kept coming, not even slowing down. If anything, they seemed to be accelerating. They're not going to turn around, Boram whispered, more to herself than anyone else. No. Daewon agreed. They're not. They think we're bluffing. They think we're weak. They've done this 17 times before, and every time the species they invaded either surrendered or died. They don't understand that humans are different. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. 3 minutes remaining. Sir, Hana said, her voice tight with anticipation. I'm detecting more Vrelith ships jumping in behind the first group. At least 20 more vessels. They're bringing their full fleet. Daewon smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Good, let them all come. Let them all cross our border. Let every single one of them enter our space uninvited. 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. All ships, this is Captain Daewon. Protocol Red Line is now active. Weapons free. Show them what happens when you cross into human space. The countdown reached 0, and the Iron Resolve opened fire. The Vrelith reinforcements arrived in overwhelming numbers. 60 massive warships materialized at the edge of the system, their hulls scarred from 100 previous conquests. They had brought their full military might, confident that sheer numbers would crush the small human defense force. On the bridge of the Fortress Olympus, Admiral Kyung-soo watched the tactical display with calm eyes. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was spotless despite the hours of combat. She had fought in the Earth Unification Wars 30 years ago, back when humanity was still learning how to fight as one species instead of hundreds of fractured nations. 60 ships against our 12, her tactical officer said nervously. Admiral, should we call for reinforcements? Kyung-soo smiled, and it was the smile of someone who knew something her enemies didn't. No need. Execute Plan Fortress. Let's show them what human territory really means. Across the system, seemingly empty space suddenly came alive. What the Vrelith had thought were civilian mining stations and research outposts suddenly revealed their true nature. Armor plating slid away to expose massive weapons batteries. Defensive shields powered up to military-grade strength. Hidden missile pods opened like flowers of death, pointing toward the alien fleet. On the border colony of Jericho's Hope, Citizen Yi Jun sat in the control center of what appeared to be a simple mining facility. He was a weathered man in his 50s with scarred hands and the bearing of someone who had seen combat. Like every human colonist on the border worlds, he had mandatory military training and a duty to defend his home. This is exactly what we built this place for, Yi Jun said to his crew, most of them fellow colonists who had been miners and farmers just hours ago. Now they were soldiers again, the way all humans were when danger called. Remember your training, stay calm, aim true. His fingers moved across the weapons console with practiced ease. The mining lasers that had carved through asteroids for the past 5 years were actually military-grade cutting beams, designed to slice through ship armor. The ore processing facility was really a missile production and launch complex. Even the colony's power plant was a disguised fusion reactor capable of generating enough energy to power a small fleet. Targets locked, one of his crew members reported, waiting for Admiral Kyung-soo's signal. The signal came as a single encrypted burst transmission. Across the system, every hidden fortress activated simultaneously. The Vrelith fleet suddenly found themselves facing not 12 ships, but dozens of fixed defensive platforms. Each one as powerful as a warship, but with the advantage of unlimited power from planetary reactors. The first salvo from the hidden defenses caught the Vrelith completely by surprise. Yi Jun's station alone fired 36 missiles in the span of 10 seconds. Multiply that by 20 hidden installations, and the result was a storm of fire that lit up the darkness of space like a new sun. Direct hits on the enemy formation, Yi Jun reported, watching his displays with satisfaction. They never even saw us coming. Aboard the Fortress Olympus, engineer Hyun-woo monitored his special project with intense focus. He was a short, stocky man who had spent 3 years developing a weapon that would change the nature of space warfare. Now was the time to see if his theories worked in practice. Admiral, he said over the command channel, the quantum mines are ready for deployment. Once we activate them, there's no turning back. The entire minefield will detonate simultaneously. Do it, Kyung-soo ordered. Let's end this quickly. Hyunwoo's weapon was brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its effectiveness. Over the past month, human ships had secretly placed thousands of small mines throughout this system, each one connected to the others through quantum entanglement. When one mine detected a target and detonated, all the others would explode at exactly the same instant, regardless of the distance between them. It meant that ships scattered across millions of kilometers of space would all be hit at the same moment, with no warning and no chance to evade. Hyunwoo pressed the activation key. Quantum mines active. Detonation in 3-2-1 mark. 20 Vrelith ships died in the same heartbeat. The synchronized explosions tore through hulls and shields alike, catching the aliens in a web of destruction they couldn't escape or defend against. Some ships were completely destroyed. Others were left crippled and drifting, their crews dead or dying. The remaining Vrelith vessels finally understood the trap they had flown into. They tried to retreat, tried to jump back out of the system, but human ships had already moved to cut off their escape routes. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They were surrounded, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had turned an entire star system into a killing ground. "Now we board them," General Minji said over the fleet channel. She commanded the Marine forces stationed throughout the human fleet, soldiers who specialized in the brutal work of close-quarters combat in space. Minji was tall and lean, her face marked with the scars of a dozen boarding actions. She had been fighting since she was 16 years old, first in the street wars of Old Seoul, and then in space when humanity reached for the stars. She knew every dirty trick of shipboard combat, every way to turn a corridor into a death trap. Her assault shuttles launched from the Fortress Olympus and 3 other carriers, speeding toward the crippled Vrelith vessels. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but point defense lasers from the human ships cleared the path. Within minutes, the shuttles had attached themselves to alien hulls, and cutting torches began burning through the armor. "Breach in 30 seconds, Minji reported, checking her rifle one last time. Behind her, 200 Marines waited in their armor, their weapons ready. They had trained for this moment, practiced it 1,000 times in simulations, but this was real, and the aliens on the other side of that hull would fight to the death. The torch finished its work, and a section of hull fell inward with a shower of sparks. Minji was the first through the breach, her rifle up and tracking for targets. She found herself in a Vrelith corridor, the ceiling too high and the walls too wide for human proportions. 3 alien warriors waited for her, massive creatures with 4 arms each holding a weapon. The fight was over in seconds. Human reflexes, human tactics, human weapons. The Vrelith were strong and tough, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Marines poured through the breach, spreading through the ship like a virus, securing sections and eliminating resistance with cold efficiency. On the bridge of what had been Overlord Thexerin's flagship, the Overlord himself watched as human soldiers stormed his ship. His bridge crew was dead around him, killed in the initial missile strike that had crippled his vessel. He was wounded, barely conscious but still aware enough to understand what was happening. Captain Daewon entered the bridge accompanied by 4 Marines, their rifles trained on the Overlord. Daewon looked around at the destruction, at the dead aliens, at the sparking consoles and shattered displays. "I tried to surrender," Thexerin rasped, his translator barely functioning. "I sent the signal. White flag protocol. We yield." "I know," Daewon said calmly. "I received your surrender request 13 minutes ago. Then why?" The Overlord gestured weakly at his ruined ship. "Why continue the attack?" Daewon's expression didn't change. "Because we gave you 3 chances to leave peacefully. We warned you 3 times before we opened fire. You ignored every warning. You crossed our border without permission. You threatened our people. So now you learn the lesson every species must learn eventually. Cross into human space uninvited and your exit won't be alive."